G'day and welcome to David Joshua Ford Live. This is episode 63, and on today's show we're going to look at DJF Cue and the run of show, what it is, how you can use automation to improve your live streaming experience. So on today's show we're going to take a look at the overview of what the Cue is, and then also the sort of control surfaces that you can use to control it. And then the third part will be, we'll go a bit more in depth in terms of building out a show prototype. I'll use my show as an example and how I control the cameras and the lights and all of that into 24 automated cues so that it makes running a live stream very easy, because chances are week to week when you're doing a live stream, there's a lot of things that need to happen in terms of setting up camera positions or lighting or certain microphones that you want on or off. And all of that can be consolidated into buttons that you press as a macro, and that will control various devices at once with a single press. And so what the DJF Cue is basically getting 24 of those buttons in sequence so that you can either use something like a clicker here, or a Stream Deck pedal, or a Stream Deck itself, or even across the network. And you can just click that to advance through different cues, kind of like you would with a PowerPoint presentation. But with this, you have the power of companion behind you. So there are hundreds of professional broadcast devices that you can build into this run of show Cue to really customize what you are doing and your particular show. So you might have ATEMs, you might have PTZ cameras, you might have lighting gear, you might have streaming encoders. There's a whole range of things that you can control from this. So let's kick off and let's take a look at an overview of what this is, a DJF Cue with 24 run of show macros. What I'm taking a look at here is, I'm going to bring up my Stream Decks. Basically, you can on 1 to 4 Stream Decks have multiple buttons, and but most of you will probably just have one Stream Deck, or can control these 32 buttons via an iPad or something across the network. So I'm going to zoom in here, come in here. So the DJF Cue is basically page 5 of my profile has 24 buttons that you can execute a show on. So just to recap, the first page here is usually the buttons that you need the most to run a live stream. A shot page, the idea is that any sort of buttons that you want to put on there to execute various shots. Scene is a bit more of like macros, so you can recall different scenes. The show page has starts and stops ATEM recorders, and there's a YouTube plugin here so you can see how many people are on YouTube, and also do some chapter markers in Notion. And that brings us to Cue, which is page 5 of my profile, and you'll see these 24 buttons here. So there's 32 buttons. The top strip is the control panel, and then below it we have the 24 cues. And then these 3 buttons along the top, you can go forwards and backwards. So if you wanted to skip a cue, you can do that. And you can see whatever cue you've got highlighted is the next one that will be executed. And in this top button here, you'll see that is reflected here in this button, part 3. So the idea, I'm going to skip back to, let's go back to part 1 so I don't jump too far ahead in the show. But the idea here is you don't even, if you need to see all of these 24 cues, you can do that. But chances are you're probably over on the shot page and you're switching a show and you just want to advance a cue. And so that's where you see these 3 buttons don't change. So I can still execute which one I want to be on, and I can go to part 1. And then when I press that from any of these other pages, this will just execute the next cue that is in the sequence. So if I hit that again, you can see I'll come back to this cue that I just had before, which is introducing DJF Cue and the overview 24 macros. So that is basically how it works, and you can I'll zoom back in here. You can design this any way you like, because these are all buttons that you can just either copy and paste in or build out your own functions that you want in there. And then the overlay of what I've built will execute these buttons and sort of step through that. So again, that is how that works from an overall point of view. You might want to think of it something like I've got here, where you've got a pre-show for a first look. Then you could have a show start. So when I started this show and my microphone went live at the top of the hour here, that's where I was actually triggering this show start, and it changed all of the camera angles and the audio and the music, that kind of stuff, these different segments. And then towards the end of this show, we'll have a goodbye and a wrap-up section to kill the microphone and have a sort of tail end of the live stream still going on a holding shot so that there's the time for the latency of YouTube to catch up, or whatever streaming platform you're doing. But chances are when you're pushing out a live stream, there's somewhere between 1 and 30 seconds of latency that might be there depending on your settings. So you want to have a sort of holding plate shot before you actually turn off the actual event live stream so that the people who are watching the end of your live stream don't lose that. All right, so let's jump across to part 2, and we're going to take a look at control surfaces. So you got an idea of what you can control and what is in there, but now what are the sort of surfaces that you can use to control it? If you're using something like the Stream Decks, you might be sitting at a desk, you might be doing this more as a director, directing someone else's show, and that is where you can have, as I was saying, 4 Stream Decks here to kind of control your show. And that's one way of doing it with the Stream Decks, but you don't have to do that. If you're doing sort of the YouTuber route like we're doing right now, that might be more of something where you have a clicker. And this is just a Logitech R500 clicker, plugs via USB into a computer, and then you can click to advance a cue, and you can also step back through the cues. The way that that works, if I jump into here, once you've got this clicker connected to a computer, you just need to open up an emulator page. So under emulators in Companion, you can open up an emulator surface. And I've already pre-built this under my menu page. So under, if you go to the menu and you go to More, these 2 buttons here are connected to the clicker. You've got the forwards button, which is going to do the next execution, and then this back button, which is going to step back. So if I stepped back, you can see that's triggered that button, and it has moved my cue back 1. So now we're going to execute part 2, and then if I click it, then we can step through the show. So that is where you could actually be out from behind the desk, you could be in front of a camera, and you could just have a little clicker in your hand. Of all the devices, I actually quite like this one because it is very ergonomic, it's very easy to carry, and it's a really neat little way of progressing through a show. The other thing that you might want, and I usually have it underneath the desk, but for today's purposes, I will show you up here, which is the Stream Deck pedal. It's about $79, and that has 3 buttons. And so again, we can sort of step back through the cue or the next cue, and then we can execute the cue. I found that putting your foot on the right side of this is a bit easier to find when you've got a shoe. You kind of just press it like that. Sometimes if you're in the middle, you can accidentally press the side of that. So that is a way that you can have a foot control, so that if you were sitting at a desk presenting and as a YouTuber or something like that, or if your hands were just elsewhere doing things on Stream Deck, then you could be using your feet to advance the cues and the run of show. The other way to do it is actually on an iPad or an iPhone. So across the network, you can basically just bring up that emulator page that I showed you before, and then under here, you have the same buttons that you would have there. So I can step forwards and backwards through this, and I can also then execute from my iPhone the next cue, which is the same cue that we're going for here. I won't go into it beyond that in terms of control surfaces, but just know that because this is a networked application, you can control this from any other computer that is on the network just by opening up a web browser, going to that address. And for that instance, if you are somewhere else across the internet, if you have a VPN set up to get into your studio environment, then it works the same. You can just pull up a web browser and advance these through there. So you could have a remote operator sitting somewhere else that is not at the event at all, who is patched in via the internet and is helping to control this show as well. All right, let's bring up the final segment. So that is building cues. So this is going to be a bit more hands-on. This will be a bit of a longer segment of showing you how you might actually want to go about creating these cues in a practical sense, because they're basically just 24 slots, and so it's part of it is your imagination and specifically what equipment you need to control that will help determine how you're going to get the most value out of it. So you've seen what it can do, you can see how to control it, And now let's take a look at building this out. So if I go to my companion page, so this is the back end of companion. Up in the toolbar here, when you open up companion, you can show hide this window, and that is where you can choose your address that you're operating on. I'm operating on a wired network here, and then you can launch the GUI, and I've got 2 of them open now, so I'll shut that one down. And under the buttons page, you've got the first 5 pages we mentioned here. And then under the Cue page, this is where we're going to edit these buttons and actually make our run of show. Quick note here, you might notice that it looks a little bit different to what you were seeing on this page here. That's because the back end of this has, this page is where you can basically cut and paste everything around, and you don't have to worry about getting any of the automations that advance it to the next one out of sync. Just for reference, over on page 97, that is where the actual skin layer of this works in terms of operating the Cue and moving it forwards, and also advancing, also making logs as well in Notion, so that each time you press a Cue, you can actually create like a chapter marker for YouTube, so that afterwards you can see all of the different chapters that you created. So that's where that is happening, but that's sort of a back-end page. We don't have to worry about that. That just sort of sits there and then it operates when you press the actual surface. But for the building of it, it's almost an identical page layout. This top row here, just ignore that, leave that alone. These are control buttons. And then these 24 buttons, so the actual buttons 9 to 32 down here, these are part of your 1 to 24 cues that we can have. You can see this is actually how I'm running my show at the moment. So these ones in here are how I started this show and got through these segments. So I just want to clear up this Cue so that we can create some space, and we're going to basically build the same sort of thing again. So I'm going to cut and paste. So you can just move these buttons around if you wanted to rearrange the order. So, you know, if you had chapters 1, 2, and 3, and for some reason you wanted to move them around, you would just cut and paste the buttons and copy them around. Okay, so now you can say we're starting with a blank slate here, and this is our Q1 in here, and it's an empty button. So we're just going to create a button, and we are going to start with a pre-show. I quite like using pre-show as a way of getting to a starting position so that you can start streaming to YouTube or whatever your platform is. You can see your live stream come through on the back end of that platform. And then on the platform or via the Stream Deck, you can manually click to go live when you're ready to stream that out. And then you might have a couple of minutes of pre-show where you're streaming a sort of holding shot before you then go live right on the top of the hour or whenever you're scheduled to go live. So that is a nice way of doing it, just a technical checks to make sure that your internet is working and doing any troubleshooting before you get going, so that you're not just automatically starting up straight away. And also in the live streaming world, it gives people a little bit of time to get ready to join your content, because if you just go live straight away, then you'll get, people will be pinged that you're live, but by the time they've joined, you're already sort of into your content. So not everyone is on the same page. So that's kind of best practice there. So we're going to build this button and we're going to call it pre-show. And I can change the sizing. 18 is good. Maybe the background, if I just want to give a little color to indicate the level of how dangerous it is or whatever, you know. So this show start one I made red just because visually it's like, okay, if I hit this, my mic is going to be live. But that's just aesthetics in the background, so we don't have to worry too much about that. So now I'm just going to go through my show, and we can look at how I kind of run my show, and you can take from this what you will. Maybe you've got different gear. You've probably got a lot of the same sort of stuff in terms of ATEMs and that kind of thing. And I'll show you what I do. So the first thing I do is I have some music that I play via VLC. So that is something I could put in for play ID. And by default, it's number 1. And if I go to VLC, which is over on this screen, I'll bring this over so you can see it. You can see my playlist just has one thing in there, which is a compilation MP3 that is the sort of show music. So that gives me about 13 minutes of music that can play over the top of a camera shot. So that's what's going on there with that. All right. So when we start our first look position, we're going to get to VLC, and it is going to do that. I'm going to add in H2R comments as my graphics application, and I want to do a hide all. Remember, trying to build a first look. So if I have any in my testing and just sort of rehearsals before a show, if I have any graphics on screen, I want to make sure I can clear all of that and start from a blank slate. I'm going to add in I got some Canon PTZs, so I want to set recall mode for camera 1 to normal. Normal here is the one that's just going to set on the fastest reposition mode because I want to get to a first position, and then I'm going to go recall by number, make sure I do the right camera here. Again, it's going to be preset 1, and I want my camera 1 to be on preset 1, which is going to look like this. This is the sort of wide shot that we have. So that is going to recall that, and it's going to go there as fast as it can, rather than, you know, if it was on a drive mode, then maybe it would take 30 seconds or however long is currently in the memory bank. By the way, if you ever get, like I'm typing in the commands here, and because I sort of have done this before, so I'm sort of know what's in there, but if you're coming fresh to it and you're like, what can I even do in here? Which is once you've gone to your connections tab and you've added in your modules for your equipment, that's where under your buttons page, when you're adding in something, this little open folder icon here will pop up here, and that's where you could, on your ATEM, for example, come through here, and this will list out all of the actions that you have, and then you can basically click on one, like you know, macro run, and it'll insert it. And you can do this multiple times and just like put a bunch of things in there, so that, and then go done, and then that's an easy way just to visually see what Companion has in there and is able to add. I'm just going to delete these actions for now because I don't need those ones, and we'll continue on. Okay, now I'm going to do PTZ2 is going to be a custom trace. PTZ2. Okay, so I've got two cameras here. I've got this one in front of me, and I've got my overhead shot. You saw that blurry shot at the beginning when we started, and I have in more recent months been able to work with Joseph Adams to get this custom trace in here, which is really powerful. So it gives, it means you can actually run between 5 different positions. And so for my show opener, rather than it being a static shot of like a God shot down, a bit blurry, so that it's, you know, showing that it's not the actual show, we can build some movement into that. And so that's where I've got 2 presets. I've got number, trying to remember what I did here. Let me go to camera 2 recall. It was, I think it was 9 and 10. I'm going to start at 10, and then it's going to move to number 9 on a 30-second loop, and the next one's going to be 30 seconds. And then I'm going to set it to go to the first position and leave this box checked. I'm going to give it 3 seconds to get there, and then it's going to just keep on going until I have done that. So let's, I don't want to trigger everything here, but we could show you, I could show you that by, I'm just going to copy this button. We're just going to turn off a bunch of these so we don't action this right away. So I'm only going to action this item, but essentially that will have, if I hold shift, I can do a shortcut to trigger it. So that's where it's doing this. So it's going to run to this preset number 10, and it's going to take 30 seconds to get to preset number 9. And previously I have programmed the position and the blurriness, and that's where that camera is now just moving between those 2 positions as Canon Companion is recalling that. So that's what is happening there. All right, let's continue on. So I've got my camera 1, which is set on a wide shot, so it's ready to do a zoom in. And I've got my camera 2, which is on its blurry shot, so that it is actually ready to be put into program. So then I'm going to do an ATEM command, which is set program input. So make sure we get the right ATEM. Set program input. I'm just going to go from input. Doesn't matter about variables in this instance. And camera 1A is not correct because for my opener, for my first position, I want to go to the camera 2. So I can have camera 2 in program, but I do also want to put my camera 1 into preview so that when we do the next command, I'll be able to have this shot that you're looking at here to come onto program. So that's where we're going to go set preview input of ATEM 1, and that will be camera 1. So that's sort of setting up the ATEM for the right switching. Okay, next up, we are going to put, where are we up to? We need some music. So we have, one thing we're going to do here too is we're going to go back up here and I'm going to put on relative delays. If you don't have that on, everything will just sort of fire one after the other, but like straight away. Whereas if it's relative delays, if there's any delays that are built into those commands, that command will execute and it'll wait however long and then execute the next one in sequence. So that's where I just want to make sure I've got relative delays turned on. And then we are going to go to ATEM. Now I'm actually running my VLC audio into the ATEM. So that is where I can control the volume of it. So we're going to set fader gain. Audio set fader gain. And I want to go to number 7 is going to be my VLC input stereo. And I'm going to set the fader to like -6. So it's high, but it's not like fully at 0. And I could put on a fade duration of 1000. Doesn't really matter at this point because it's sort of a pre-show. But that might be nice just to have a bit of a soft transition there. And okay, so now what we're going to do is bring on some graphics. So we're going to go show hide graphic. And I'm going to show, and we need to choose the graphic, which is going to be 1400. That's the one. Okay, so I've selected that. To show you what that is doing, this is my H2R rundown, which is connected back to Companion. And so that is bringing up this one, which is the time of day. And so it's a countdown to the time of day. Today we started at 2 p.m. So what I'm going to do is trigger this one to go at 2 p.m. This is going to be a long number because I've gone past it. So now it's going to go 23 hours until the next day, but that's going to be my countdown. So that's what's good about this is I'm creating a show that is dynamic. So the camera shot is obviously live for the blurriness. So I'm not doing like a videotape pre-roll with a very certain amount of time. So if I go live 5 minutes or 10 minutes before, it doesn't really matter how much time before I go live, like before the top of the hour. And the music has 13 minutes on it, so there's plenty of time for the music there. And then this countdown is obviously dynamic too, so that is just going to show me how much time the viewer can expect to get to the until the show actually begins. So that is what is going to trigger, and then it'll come off again. I'm going to move this one back out of the way here. Okay, now we are going to, where are we? Show, we're going to come up to upstream key. So I use, for the graphics, I have them coming out of H2R in through a HDMI out from the computer, and it's a full green screen, and then the ATEM does a chroma key. And so I'm using the ATEM's key, upstream key number 4, to cut out the green, and then that's just permanently on, so that anytime I want to run a graphic, the overlay will fire. So as a setup precaution, I just want to make sure that that is going to be on and set up. So I'm going to type in upstream key, set inputs. Oh, that's the wrong one, ATEM 3. That is not going to help me. upstream key. That's tricky. You got to watch out for that if you've got multiple ATEMs. It's very easy to put in the wrong ATEM and then you wonder why your show doesn't work. Upstream key, set inputs. Okay, so I'm working on mix effect layer 1. I'm going to use upstream key number 4. The source is going to be H2R on input number 8. And then the key source doesn't matter because I don't have anything in there, so we're just going to leave that as black. And so that will just make sure that my key is always on. And previously in my ATEM, I have done the chroma key sampling and then I've saved those settings. So anytime I reboot my ATEM, it's always going to be there and ready to go. And so this is just a safety. If along the way sometimes it gets turned off, then I want to make sure when I get ready for my show that that key is always turned on. Now my microphone is obviously open. I want to make sure that we kill it. So again, I'm going to go set input mix option, set input mix option for ATEM singular. And I'm running a 2ME constellation. So we have a TRS in the back, which is stereo. And then I want to make sure that is off. And so what that is going to do is my microphone is going into a sound mixer, and then the output of that board is going into the ATEM, and that is where the majority of the program audio is coming. And so before the show, I want to make sure that my microphone is cut so that I can cough and splutter and clear my throat, chat to someone, whatever, and that's not going to go out to program. And so this command is going to cut my microphone and make sure that that is all set. Okay, what else we got? TRS, ATEM2, and let me see, mix option off, that one doesn't matter. I need to go to, also as an upstream key precaution, before when I was doing my shots, I had the circular key down the bottom. And so because I turn that on and off sometimes, I just want to make sure that I don't have that on when I do my pre-show. So I'm going to do an upstream key set on air. This one. Okay, so I want to make sure that my mix effect of upstream key 1 is off, just so that I don't get my shot with a double shot of of me in that circular picture down the bottom. Okay. Then depending on how you want to run this show, you could build in other commands. I have chosen not to do this, but you could, for example, build in like a record function here. So if you wanted to, you could use a hyperdeck or one of your ATEMs to actually start recording at this point. I've chosen not to do that because I quite like to use this run of show as a rehearsal sequence as well. It sort of gives me some structure to follow. And so before I go live, what I'll do is I'll actually go back to the top of show, do my first positions, do my intro, and then go through the segments, just sort of step through that. So that just helps me give some structure. And what I love about the cues is that visually I can always see what the next thing is. So if I come to the end of talking about a segment and go, what's next? You just hit the button, and then the next graphic pops up and you go, okay, part 2, now what we're going to do here. So that helps from a presenting point of view and just sort of keeping things moving along. Okay, so it's going to be fun if we start testing this. I might come back to, might have to jump through this. Before I test this, let's build out the next button because I think that'll bring my audio back on. So we're going to go to create a button here in our slot number 2. And we are going to call it show start. Now I'm giving these like specific names because anytime you, all of these buttons when they get pressed, the title of that button actually gets logged in Notion. And so that becomes something that you can use. So I will, for example, just drag this one in so you can see what I'm talking about. When we end up running this show, you can see all of these other sessions that I've got. This was one that I did on the weekend, I think. And so we had, when it was started, and you'll see here pre-show, show start, and it actually has the text in there. And then part 1 was pressed a couple of times. and this questions were in here, and then goodbye and wrap with my other buttons here. So all of this is going to be logged in Notion, and so that's where choosing what text you put in this button is helpful, because that's the title of that marker when that gets hit. So let me just scroll up here, and I have copied from H2R. So rather than just being show start, I want to have some dynamic text in here. So I can actually bring that in by going to variables, and I'm going to go to H2R, which is down here. And this is where you can actually copy the text. So I want to have the title of the show, which is this one. So if I just highlight that and copy it, this is the variable slug, and I'm going to put that in the button. But what is going to end up in Notion is the actual text here of David Joshua Ford Live, episode 63. That's a really important bit, just so that I have very specific metadata rather than just like show start. It's like a very specific show. It's episode 63. So I'm going to come back over to my button, show start, and I'm going to maybe semicolon, paste that in. And now we've got a very long button because there's a bunch of text here, which I want it to end up in Notion, but visually it looks difficult to read. So I'm just going to set my text to 18. And so that's where, when I'm looking at the Stream Deck, I can say, show start. I know what that button is. So we're not sort of squinting to read this text here. Again, I'm going to make the background red just because it just gives me a visual indication of what's going on here. And then we can just work our way through these actions. So now that we've done our pre-show, we can do our show start button, and that is going to get us in here. So we are going to, under the press ones, go set fade again. Set fade again for the ATEM. So remember I said the music was on VLC, so I want to go back there and I'm going to reduce the volume because I don't want the music competing with me. I'm going to give it 3 seconds, so 3,000 milliseconds, and that is going to, when we start the show, it's going to drop the volume of the show. I also want to unmute my microphone, so we're going to go set mix, so set input mix option. And I want to go back to my TRS channel. So this was my voice that was coming in, and I want to make sure that is turned on. And then we're going to go to, what are we going to go to? Presets. We're going to go to PTZ. So now I want to, remember we put the PTZ into the normal mode before, which was basically saying to the camera, as quick as you can, get to the wide shot on preset 1. Now I want to put the camera into a different mode, which is going to be recall mode of PTZ set recall mode. Here we go. All right, so we had normal was before. Now I want to switch it over to time, and then I'm going to set the drive time. Set drive time of 1 to 30 seconds. So this is going to be the pan in from my wide shot. So scroll up here, 30 seconds. So once we start the show from the wide shot preset 1, I'm actually going to come into preset number 3, which is going to be the tight shot. And I'm going to do that by going recall by number, like that, and that instead of preset 1 is going to be number 3. So the way I set up my cameras is the wide shot is on preset 1, and then I've got sort of a mid shot, which is tighter than, I think I'm on a wide at the moment. Let's go to, this is the mid shot. That's sort of my safety fallback one. And then my close up is in here. So they're kind of my basic shots from this angle through the teleprompter. I've also got like a desk angle, but I don't usually use that as much because it's not as handy, unless I'm trying to show something from the front, like some equipment, that kind of stuff. Okay, so moving through this, again, we need H2R. Remember we we had the timer in of the H2R. Now that should clear when it comes to the top of the hour. So chances are it'll be cleared, but just in case it doesn't or something else is on, let's add in H2R hide all. So I just want to make sure we've cleared the graphics to start fresh. And let me just see what I've got here. So that's all going to happen right away. And then we want to remember we had this shot, which is in program, and then this shot is in preview. And so what I want to do is a crossfade between them. So I'm going to take the shot of me on camera 1 and put that into program. So we are going to get, what do we call that? Auto transition. Auto transition on ATEM on ATEM. Okay, so that's just going to do an ATEM. So this is obviously relying on the fact that the previous button has run and it has set the preview and input. So we're not going to go back and redo those. You could if you wanted to make sure that you haven't done any funky switching in between. But that, like, you could add in like a preview, particularly if you wanted to put camera 1 in preview to make sure that that was always in preview, because maybe in the interim you've done some switching. But I'm going to leave that for now. So that is going to switch that. But I do want to wait half a second because I want to get the camera takes just a little bit of time to sort of get moving into its maneuver. So I'm going to give it 500 milliseconds just for those actions to run, and then we're going to do a crossfade in there. Okay. Now I'm going to wait another 2 seconds, then I'm going to add in another graphic. So we're going to go show hide, and we're going to show the animated lower thirds. Always a little bit tricky trying to find which one you're looking for. This one, text 1, text 2. So that is to bring back my what this is looking like on the H2R side of things, which is going to be this one. So I'm going to say, and this is just a lower third, but I quite like the animation rolling out. And so I've built this to be my actual title of the show as an overlay, even though it's just a lower third. So, all right, let's go back to here. But I do want to give that 2 seconds before it turns on. So remember, we've got to have our relative delays switched on so that this will run sequentially rather than everything firing at the same time. Okay, scroll back down. H2R show hide graphic. And almost there, and then we'll test this out. So now that we have our graphic that's on, all of our essential stuff is underway. I just want to make sure that this camera is ready for the next shot, because part of this automation and switching, and actually most things in sort of TV and live streaming, are about not what's happening right now, but what's about to happen in the future, 5 seconds or so. Like if you're cutting a panel discussion, you don't really want to look at the person who's talking, you're looking for reaction shots. And same thing here, we are looking for where are we going to be in a couple of seconds from now when we need to quickly like pull up this shot of this camera. So we want to preset this to something else. So I'm going to go recall by number, which is that? Recall by number, preset number, PTZ number 2. And I'm going to go preset number 3, just the way that I've set up my cameras. So under camera 2, I'm going to turn this one off. Where are we? And so my wide shot, you can see down here. I'm going to put this back into my reposition mode so we move a bit faster. So again, my wide shot is here. My sort of mid shot is like just the table. And then 3 is going to be the close-up, and that's sort of what I'm usually presenting, is something on the table in this kind of size. So after we've broken away from this being the shot that holds the stream, and I've cut to my main camera, I want to make sure that this camera is ready for the next thing, which is going to be PTZ3. And I've also got available like individual ones of these stream decks if I needed to pull that up. or if I needed to go over to the pedal. So these are all the presets that I can pull up, and I've just happened to pull up number 3 is the one I've chosen. And but I'm going to give that a second to do that, just to make sure that we've fully cleared, which we probably already have. And then I want to go another graphic, show hide graphic. And this one is going to be on today's show. On today's show, this is a checklist. And I'm going to give this one 10 seconds, so 10,000 milliseconds. So this just, and I can just put these times in now because I've done this before, but this is something that I would rehearse and practice and go, okay, so once I've said hi and then the title comes up, I need, 10 seconds to just ramble a bit before I'm like, okay, on today's show, and I'm going to bring up this graphic. So the graphic that I'm talking about here is this checklist. So that basically brings up all my chapters. And so I can sort of give you an overview of what you can expect in today's show. And that will, I think, automatically fade off. Yeah, it'll fade off after a set amount of time. Let me just come over here. Okay. And lastly, fly to cue frame. I don't think we need that one. Okay, so I think we are set. So now we should have built this sequence, and we can try it out. And if we break something, then we can start again. And we're not going to break anything too much because, like, I don't have any commands in here that are like stopping a live stream or something like that. So that is, yeah. Okay. So let's give this a go. We're going to come over to my Stream Deck. Let's go to our close-up one. So we'll come over here so you can see what I'm doing. So I could be on any of these pages, and I can, with these buttons here too, you can see I'm actually running a Notion thing here by, this is saying end. So these buttons, I can go forwards and backwards through my show cues. NA means there's nothing in there. So, okay, these are my old cues that I had in there. So with these, if you long press for half a second, it's going to jump back to the top of the cue. And if you long press the end, it's going to go to Q24. It says NA because nothing's in there. So often what I'm doing in a rehearsal is I'm often just like long pressing for that half second, and it will jump back to this first cue, and then I can hit pre-show. And so that means I can very easily just rehearse several times. So if I get to a point in my automated cue where I go like, that messed up or whatever, and I really need more time to be able to say that before that graphic comes on, something like that, that's where it's very easy just to hit, hold that for half a second, you'll jump back up to pre-show, and then you can trigger that. When I do get going with the actual show, what's built in here is if you long press this start button for 3 seconds, then this end button will turn red like it is now because I've already triggered that because we're in a show. And that is going to start a Notion session. So that means that now any of these cues that are triggered, they're going to be logged as, not time code, but like it's going to show you the duration of that. So you can use that for chapter markers and that kind of thing. And likewise, if I hold down the end for 3 seconds, at the end of the show, once I'm finished, that will stop the Notion session. But even if you don't, it closes itself out if you don't use it. So there's no problem in stopping it. But starting it, you got to make sure you start it if you want to log all of this. Okay, so we're on the pre-show. Let's give this a go and see if this works, and we'll run the show opener again. And so you can see how this works from now. G'day and welcome to David Joshua Ford Live, episode 63. We're going to talk about running the Cue, DJF Cue run of show. How was that? Can you hear we have the music in the background? And on today's show, this graphic comes on, and these are things we're going to talk about. So great to have you here. If you're in the comments, let me know what you're interested to learn about today. So there you go. So they're the first two cues, and you can see that we are into the show, into the open up bit, and we have some background music going, and this is a general sort of opener. Now we need to move into the body of our content, but we need some buttons that will transition us there. And so what I've got is really, I often have like 3 chapters. It's kind of an easy way just to sort of put together a YouTube show. The first one is going to fade out this music. And then chapters 2 and 3 are kind of just repetition of that. So let's take a quick look at that, and then we'll take a look at the goodbye and the sort of wrap up of this, how you would build a show there. Okay, so coming back over to our super source. This is where we're going to have part 1. Part 1, again, it looks weird, so I'm just going to make the text this size, and I'm just going to make it yellow just to signify that it's a chapter. And what do we got in here? So in here, the way I run my chapters is I basically have a graphic that comes up. So that's where I'm going to have a variable list. Select a row. But you might have other graphic software, and there'll be plugins for that. Like you can go back to your connections tab and you can add in that if you wanted to run it through your one. So now I'm going to use list 1 and I'm going to look at the number, and I want to use row 1, list 1. And so what that is doing is under my variables, this is where it's pulling list 1 and it's pulling row 1, and I'm looking at the text here is going to be this macro here, or the variable, which is list 1.1. 1.2 is the description here. So this means that week to week, it's very easy for me to update the topics that I have, not by having to make any graphics in Photoshop. I can just come into H2R. This is my text here that is pulling in the title text that we saw before. So that's the title, doesn't change. Usually I'm just updating, episode 64, that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to change my topics and sort of subheaders through here. So this is where this is pulling this chapter data from in H2R. And then the cues themselves are using these list 1.1 variable codes to pull that over. You can see at the moment it's ready. It's pointing at my third one. So that's what is going to be loaded in there at the moment. But for my part 1, I want to make sure my variable list is going list 1, row number 1. And then I am going to trigger my camera button. So you could go through and build out all of the, put this camera in there and do this and that to get camera 1 onto shot if we want to come back to the presenter for the next chapter. But the other way of doing it is just to reference another button, and that is where I actually use my scene page in Companion to sort of build compound actions, I guess we could call it. So what I'm going to put in here is a trigger press. T-R-I-G-G-E-R, trigger press, internal button trigger press. Okay, and at the moment it's just going to this page and this button, which is not sort of doing anything, but I want to go to press a button on a certain page. So for example, I normally, on this page 6 is where I'm running my show off at the moment, but normally I would run something off like, where are we? Off the scene page here. So I have macros that I've built here for, this is camera 1 in the blue, so a wide shot, mid shot, close up, or showing the desk. And these being compound actions are actually like doing all those things of setting the program input, putting the camera into the right drive mode, sending the camera to a particular preset position, and making sure that the upstream key is off air, that little circle, so you don't get a double up. So that's what I mean about building scenes and macros. And rather than typing that into each cue, you could basically build a run of show button that presses other buttons, and that's what we're going to do now. So this one, number 2, so my preset number 2, which is a mid shot, and I've also put safe because safe for me means this H2R action is in here, so it's hiding all the graphics. So if I'm ever like in a show and I've got comments up and graphics and I'm a couple of levels deep in a stream deck and I just want to get back to like a position where I know that, okay, I'm going to be on camera, it's wide enough that people can see what's going on and there's no graphics, then that's where under the scene page I can just hit my safe button, which I didn't, hang on, what am I doing here? Maybe I didn't do that one. Okay, there we go. Hit my safe button and it will pull back to this shot. So that's my safety shot of like, it's not a close up, it's like wide enough to sort of see the scene, you can see the stuff, and there's no graphics. So this button is the one that we're going to reference to get back there. So let's go back to my super source and we are going to go to page 6 is where I'd saved this one. And this is the button, and I can see up here, this is page 6 and button 26. So now under my part 1, instead of it pressing the own button, I'm going to go to page 6 and I'm going to press 26, or you can just type it in, 26, and you'll see this preview here. So you have the confidence of knowing like, ah, yeah, that is the button that I meant to press. And so now it's going to trigger that and all of the contents of that button. And so this is kind of a compound button without having to retype everything out. And the main thing you want to avoid here is that you don't move that button. So if you have a page of macros, just like what I have is like, this is the page where I build macros and they don't move, because if you build too many of these layers and then you start moving buttons out, that's where you'll run into problems. But this is a really handy way of avoiding errors of having to make, 6 actions each time, and you can just go like, oh, I want the safe button, I'm gonna hit that one in this sequence. So we've brought up our graphic, we're going to hit that one, we're gonna give it a 30-second delay, and then we are going to go to set fader game, set fader gain for the ATEM is going to be on VLC, that's where our audio is coming through. And rather than it being, remember we had full volume, I was using it -6. When it's underscored, like you're hearing at the moment, that is 31. And so now we want -100. And I'm gonna do it over a 5-second fade out. So we have it sort of fading out. And then that's it. So that is going to be our next chapter to get from whatever we're talking about to the next chapter. So we are on part 1. It's already selected. I think that's right. Let me see here. Make sure we're on Q3. Yep. So I could come over to my page here and we could advance to our next cue. And then you can see, it's very quiet in my ear, but if I listen, okay, so the music has faded out and we are on that. Did we run the graphic? I didn't actually look to see if we ran the graphic. Let me just go run that again. Okay, I don't think I ran that graphic because it was probably being canceled out by itself. Let me see, list various rows. What are we doing here? Let me just check my notes. Select the row, trigger press, part 1. I think we need, so I've got my, oh, I need to turn on relative delays, is that right? Relative delays, no, I don't need relative delays. My graphic is, I don't think I should have had this delay on. Let me turn that one off. I probably should not have had that. Let me try that. Okay, so I'm going to try pressing this one again directly. And it still didn't come on. Okay, maybe I'm pressing and go for a wide shot here. 6.5. oops, 6 and 25. 25. Just going to pull up my buttons so we can try and do a wide shot. Okay, and the graphic, I'm still not pulling up the graphic. I might have something in there which I've like cancelling itself out with the, or maybe it's the wrong order. If I try that, and we go 30, is that going to do it? Not bringing up the graphic. Let me just check in H2R, make sure we've got what we've got going on here. It has selected it. Did I not put in the graphic? Let me see. Wide shot, so I'm going to pull to that one. We're going to go select the row and then, oh, I didn't actually put it in. Okay, so this is why we have to do like a run through and test things. I selected the list, but I didn't choose to show or hide it. So this is where under, because I skipped it, under show hide graphic, we are going to put in, there's like a list function, which is a list. So this is my lower third. I'm going to drag this one back up because I forgot to put that one in. So we're going to show this one. I'm going to give it a 30-second delay to just make sure this is going. And I'm going to move this one back because that's why I had that. So this is in the background, is just the very first thing it's doing is setting that list, because otherwise you would have the graphic fire with the wrong text in it. So you need to give it time for that text to update to here. Because remember, it was sitting randomly here on number 3. So I want to say, go to this text, and then a little bit of time later, go, where are we? And then bring on that graphic. So, okay, so we've got, I'm changing the text to be list 1, row 1, because that's my part 1 text. We're going to hit our safe button, which I was experimenting with 25, but we're going to go back to 26, not the wide shot. We're going to go to the mid shot. And then we're going to have 30 seconds, milliseconds delay, and we're going to bring on this graphic. Now, the other thing that's important about that 30 seconds is in my safety shot, remember we had a hide all graphics. So that's something where you've got to make sure you get the order right, because if you brought on the new graphic and then hit a button which said hide all graphics, your graphics would end up going off screen and not have the desired effect. And then we've got the VLC. Okay, so the audio's already run, but let's go for pressing this button. Where do we have pre-show? So we are under part 1, so I should be going to this one. What am I doing? Part 1, why is that not running? 6 and 2, 26. It should be running. Maybe it's not. It's weird because it is running in my other one. Force press diff. Oh, okay. I missed another setting, which was this button is not firing because I didn't push force press if already pressed. So this is the thing with these, when you trigger another button, is I've pushed a button and I'm saying push this other button, but I actually because I've already pressed this button, this checkbox needs to say I've already pressed it here, but force press it over here. So hopefully that will work now. Let's see if we can run this one to part 1. Ta-da! Okay, and that's how I do that transition. We'll move on quickly to the goodbye and the wrap, because I think you kind of get the idea of this by now, and then we can take some questions. So I am going to basically come back to here, and I just want to copy this one here and here. We're going to paste in part 2, and then let me just double check I'm doing the right thing here. So before we had list 1, row 1, now we want row 2. So this gets a bit faster as we progress, and this is all the same. I'm just going to turn off the audio because by now the audio has already been turned off, so I don't really need that. You can either delete it, or sometimes it's easy just to disable the action if you need it there for the future, if you want some Actually, I might just delete it for now, but know that you can disable it without actually having to delete it. So now I'm going to copy and paste that over the top, and we want to have part 3, and we're going to go row 3, and we're hitting the same button, and that's all good. So now when we come back to, we had part 2, so let's test out part 2. Control surfaces, excellent, that one works. Let's go a little bit wider, maybe. So just so you can see the difference here. And then if we want to hit part 3, we're going to be like, okay, now building our cues, this is how we're going to do. And I'm going to show you all about how to make it. Excellent. All right, powering along here, hitting the home stretch, stick in there with me, and we'll get to Q&A. I can see you guys in the chat. And let me see here. So I'm going to type in goodbye. Goodbye. Again, it's too big, so let's make it smaller. This is going to be a red one because I want to be careful about pressing this just visually. And let me see in here. I got a bunch of actions in here, so I'm not going to go through all of this, but I'm just going to copy and paste what I've already got here, and I'll talk you through it so that you can follow this along at home and sort of build out something similar. So the idea here is that we've finished part 3 and we want to wrap up the show, and so that's where I need to set up certain things for that, kind of like we did at the beginning of the show with the first look. This is going to be getting the ready for the outro. So there's 2 stages to this. One is the goodbye section and then the wrap. The goodbye section is basically 30 seconds where once I press that button, I know that I have 30 seconds to verbally wrap up, say thanks for watching, any calls to action in terms of where you might want to go to find what I've been talking about. And the camera is slowly zooming out over this time, and there's some graphics that are showing, and the music is coming in, and that's getting ready for us to close down the show, which will be when I'm ready, I'll hit the wrap button. And the wrap is going to basically do the reverse of what we did at the front of the show, where it's going to fade across to the God shot looking down on the desk out of focus, and it's going to kill my microphone, probably most importantly, so that we can kind of wrap up off air, and the music will increase. So we're back to that sort of holding page, so that if your YouTube stream or wherever it is has 1 to 5, 30 seconds, however long it is before the video that you're pushing out here to get to the actual audience, you need to sort of wait and watch that back, and you need something to hold during that time. So that's what that's doing. So if we look down the goodbye section, I'm recalling my theme music on play ID number 1. I'm hiding all the graphics. I'm telling my camera to go to the time mode, and I'm going to set it to 30 seconds. It's going to be preset recalling number 1. So the only note that I make to myself here is it's often good when I'm talking if I'm on something tighter. So hopefully at this point in the show, I'm actually on my preset number 3, which is my close-up. So it goes from a close-up out to the wide shot on preset 1. My camera 2 is going to go back to that custom trace where it's moving backwards and forwards. And we've got the ATEM is putting camera 2 into the preview, so it is ready for me to transition across. And the music is set low, so because remember before we had it at 100, so it was like minus 100, it was right down the bottom. We want to bring it up to minus 27. I think 31 is probably better. And then we want to bring on the graphic after a little bit of time, a second, which is like where we're going to go for that. And then that'll give me like a 30-second maneuver, because we had that camera on a 30-second moving shot. And then when I say, all right, thanks for joining, see you next week, I hit the wrap button, and that is killing my microphone. It is transitioning across to camera 2 so that I'm not on camera anymore. It's bringing up the music through VLC, and it's turning off the microphone here. And it's also, after 3/4 of a second, bringing on a graphic saying where you can download things. So that's kind of the overall gist of how I put together a show, how I run that. Yeah, so hopefully that helps. Am I hitting the right button here? Let's go to, where are we? Goodbye. And no, I got to get this one ready for that one. Okay, let's take some questions. Thank you for sticking around. I know there's a lot to get through, but hopefully that gives you an idea of how to build out a custom show. And again, if you've got other equipment, Panasonic, Sony, whatever, it doesn't have to be a Canon PTZ camera, or is like hundreds of pieces of equipment that Companion can control. And so you can put any of those commands into one of these buttons and build out your show so that you can repeat that sequence every week. So that becomes my sort of show structure. I have my cameras in a certain spot, I go through certain chapters, and then the actual content can change week to week, and then I can use other macros to sort of bounce around between my super source shot or putting particular cameras on air and that kind of thing. So let's take a quick look here in the chat. We've got Frankie King, TJ, we've got Dan, and Martin. Great question. Is this Cue feature the same as what John Barker's Rundown Studio does? I just saw him talking about that today. That looks really cool. This is a bit different. This is probably a bit more of a technical execution. Similar sort of concept of like a bunch of cues in sequence that can be executed, but this is really about sort of recalling camera angles and cameras, and if you want lights and microphones, and sort of executing all of that in a way that's sequential. So rather than you having to look at a panel and choose from 32 buttons, like, oh, I want to execute that one now, you have ahead of time laid out your broad structure of the show. So this is not to say that this is necessarily like the only button you would press, but it can step you through some of the large chapters that you need to get through to make certain transitions, or to run a sting music or put graphics across. So that sequence can help you give some structure to your rehearsals. So I think John Barker's Rundown Studio is probably more of, I don't know how to describe it, but it's really cool tool that goes across the internet, and it's more of a rundown that a crew would use, and I would imagine, I haven't seen it in detail, but I would imagine that this could, or that could tie into this. Like if you wanted to trigger certain cues, they could sort of work in tandem. If it has a Companion plugin, I'm not quite sure, because I've only just saw his promo video this morning. But similar concept, but I would say more of the technical execution than the sort of the soft execution of people being on the same page and clocks and that kind of stuff, but could integrate. Martin says, how can I make VLC stop playing the next clip in the playlist and simply pause after the current clip finishes? How can I make VLC stop playing? You can do that in the settings. If you go into VLC is a bit tricky. If you go into VLC, let me see here. If we go into VLC preference settings, show all, and off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember playlist interface, main interface, Mac OS. It's somewhere in here. It's like play and pause. I think it's in there. One of those ones. If you go to my website, I do actually have a VLC instructions page on there, which will, it's not this one, but it's davidjoshuaford.com/VLC, probably, not store. And I've got instructions there, but in the menus you'll see how to install that, because VLC can be quite involved. Dan says, does Companion advanced PowerPoint slides without PowerPoint being active in the program. Does the Logitech Clicker in Stream Deck have this capability? So the, I think, well, so in my profiles, I use the Vicrio module to send commands to Google Slides. So that's in terms of how I've integrated it. It's Google Slides using Vicrio to advance the slides. And yes, that interface needs to be in the foreground for those commands to go through. The Logitech Clicker, separate to that, would be able to control it. It's basically a device which is sending keystrokes to a computer, so whatever's in the foreground. And to that end, to use the Logitech Clicker, as I was showing you before, the emulator page needs to be in the foreground of your computer. I was working on a way to not have it that way, but it's a bit more involved. But for the moment, that's the way. You've got to have that emulator page up. Eric says that this is smooth once you get all the structure in place. Yeah, I think as you saw there when I was doing that part one, and I was like, wait, what am I doing wrong here? Sometimes if you're trying to do a complex sequence, definitely test that out and run that a couple of times, and also do some troubleshooting where you could make sure that like if for some reason you're adding in upstream keys elsewhere in your program, and then you realize, oh, there's a random upstream key that's been left on. So those are the sort of things you might want to build into that sequence to make sure when you start your show, everything is sort of reset to the top of it. Michael says, is there a solution to bring in a Teams live event Q&A questions? Not sure. I have not looked into Teams. I would imagine there is. I feel like everything, like the breadth of Companion is so much that like there's so much equipment and so many things that it does control. But I haven't looked into it. And if that is not there and you wanted it, you could on GitHub put in a request for that module. Excellent. Michael also says, did I miss where you set the positions of the PTZ cameras? So you would have seen me putting in the recall. So I'm recalling different presets. The actual information of the pan, tilt, and zoom and the exposure settings, all of that data is stored in the actual camera, assigned to presets 1 to 100. And so what Companion is doing is just saying, hey, recall preset 3, and the camera is using that data. So think of Companion as a remote control. It's not actually storing that camera data. All you're storing is a number which is saying, I want to hit preset 1, and I want you to get there in 30 seconds, or whatever the case may be. So for that, that's where you would go into, let me have a look. That's not right. I was going to go to this one. You would go into your actual PTZ. So number 1, and you would, I've got 1 to 8 here, or else recall up to 36. I was able to save for each camera. And you would basically, you can either, where are we? Yeah, I'm over here. So you can either push in between your positions, or if you long press, it will save that new position. And so when you're long pressing to save that position, it's saving the current parameters. So the exposure, the PTZ, all that kind of stuff is saved into the actual camera. So hopefully that makes sense. Mike says, I should come back to myself on camera. Let me go here. I noticed you use the YouTube plugin. Can you talk more about how to use this? So in all of my profiles, I do have this included. I haven't talked too much about it because it's a little bit more involved on the back end to set up. And so I don't want to be the one to do the tutorial and have people be like, I don't understand how to use it. It is in there, it does work. I can't show you so much here because it reveals all of like the OAuth client ID tokens and stuff in here. but basically in my profile, it's already in there, so the buttons are integrated. Let me come back to, what do we have? We had this one. He's talking about under the show. I've got these buttons here. So this is showing how many viewers. I can send a chat over here if I wanted to send certain things. And so that's what I did at the beginning of the show. That helps because then I don't have to type out all of the, if I've got a generic question at the beginning of like, hey, where are you joining from, to try and get people engaged. I don't have to sit there and type it out. I can just hit a button and send the chat. And also show me stream health, and I can start and stop the stream. So that is the integration with Companion. So again, you could build all of this into your run of show if you wanted to do it like that. I should also mention, if I come back here, that the other thing that you can do, and I won't go into this now because it's too much detail, but you can use another part of Companion called triggers to press buttons at certain times. So that can be beyond what I was saying about having 24 cues and wanting to press it in sequence at a certain time. You could use triggers to actually activate a certain button or to hit a certain cue at a certain time. So just quickly, if you want to experiment with that, you've got your buttons here, but over on your triggers tab, you can add in a trigger and schedule. So I have one that I'm not using here, which is like to automatically go live at 5 minutes before 10, and that can either run these commands, or I could just put in that press a certain button command that you saw me make before for that sequence. So that's another way of doing that. Last questions here. Mike says, great, thanks for explaining all the stuff. Great show and very, very useful. Thanks. I'm glad that you found that useful, and it's really great to be able to share this with you. And hopefully this cue will help you improve your experience of live streaming, because for me, it was something that, as I was saying, made live streaming more enjoyable, because the things that I have to repeat every week, I can put that into the run of show queue, and then I know that I can hit certain buttons and recall different states, and I don't have to worry about thinking about which buttons to press, because it's already in sequence, and I can boil it down to something like a clicker. So let's wrap up there, because it's been plenty of time. Hopefully that was very helpful, and you sort of got an idea of what you can achieve through the DJF Cue as well as through Companion and more broadly. The profiles that I was talking about are available on my website, davidjoshuaford.com/store is where you'll go to find that. We do have a Black Friday sale at the moment, 20% with the discount code BlackCyber20. So if you want to use that at checkout, you get 20% off. Until next week, have a great Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and I will see you soon. All right, take care. Bye.